Okay.
both scenes. Cause...
Oh yeah, so go ahead and videotape that.
This be Alexandra's thing.
Oh, okay. So I'm going to start with the short slideshow, which is just an overview of what I'm going to be going into, because then we're going to move to the notes on the board after we do the activity, which the activity is some film scenes from a movie that recently came, I think it came out in 2004 or something, and when the movie came out, the Jewish community was saying this is accurately depicting a Nazi youth academy. So, to begin, the Nazi youth, Hitler, really thought that youth were important, and good thing we just had education and everything, because Julie really set this open that he thought it was Hitler thought it was important to teach about the Jewish problem. He had the Hitler Jugendheim and had enlisted over 25,000 boys, and this says ages 14 upwards, but there were many different groups of Hitler youth, so generally it was ages 10 to 18 that he was enlisting the youth in different groups. Girls from ages 10 to 18 were also part of a league of German girls. This is... Alright, Hannah.
I sent my video to you.
It's okay, we'll take notes on the board soon. This is just an overview so you know what you'll see when I show the films. So then, these are the flags that they used. There were many different groups, like I said, and they all had some version of a Nazi flag. Now, here are some photos of the women at their academies, because Hitler had a strong belief in keeping genders separate, and he thought that, similar to when we were analyzing the sources, that he really thought that women are to be mothers and boys are to be in the military. Now, the Soviets, there was brainwashing on the side, but it was very much the ideas of teaching communism and creating the... Julie, could you pronounce? Komsomo?
Komsomo.
Exactly like that. And they were taught political views, and they were taught to hate the enemies, similar to how Hitler was teaching the children to hate the Jews. They were saying, hate the enemies of the working class, the bourgeoisie, the rich. Now,
wait, can I just have a question?
Of course.
Was the Komsomo, was it done through propaganda posters, or was it done through
enlisted
movies?
people through the propaganda posters and everything, but it was very much creating these academies, touching on education, that they were pulling in almost like a Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, but you go to school for it as well.
So Komsomo is like a group?
Yes.
It's a group, and then it was enlisted through propaganda.
Like, you would go there from, 9 a.m. till 3 p.m.,
okay.
And then you would study, they would teach you different things. It was very much focusing on education. Now, here is one scene from the movie, which is the Hitler Youth Academy, and I'm turning the English captions on so you can understand what they're saying. And you have to understand that I couldn't find anything depicting the Soviet, but it was really brainwashing, and they made you feel like you were part of something. People were so poor after World War I that they were taking their young children and sending them to these academies because they would have warm beds, showers, they would be fed, have an education.
Ich möchte euch auf das Allerherzlichste zum neuen Dienstjahr 1942 begrüßen. Allen neuen Schülern sei noch einmal ausdrücklich gesagt, dass dies ein Ort ist, an dem ihr ohne Ansehen eurer Herkunft ausgebildet werdet. Ob Bauern oder Fabrikantensohn, in dieser Schule seid ihr alle gleich. Nämlich die kommende Elite unseres 1000-jährigen Reiches. Männer machen Geschichte. Aber wir machen die Männer. Wir nehmen uns eurer an und werden den glitzernden Rohdiamanten in euch so lange schleifen, bis am Ende ein funkelnder Edelstein daraus geworden ist. Denn wenn der Endsieg erst einmal gekommen ist, werden wir jede Menge Gauleiter brauchen. Und da meine ich nicht Kärnten oder Mecklenburg, ich spreche von Gauleitern für Washington, Moskau, London oder Kapstadt. Deshalb nutzt die Zeit, stählt Körper und Geist und seid treue, verlässliche Kameraden. unseren tapferen Soldaten an den Fronten des Reiches und unserem heißgeliebten Führer Adolf Hitler ein dreifaches Sieg! Sieg! Sieg!
Now we sing the national anthem that Hitler created. Now the next scene that I'm going to show you is much later in the film, and it's showing that these people, the children didn't always know what was going on. In this scene, the children are being told that they have to go investigate some like missing
Gauleiter, ich bin
people.
vollzählig angetreten.
Einheitler Jungmann!
Einheitler Gauleiter!
Rührt euch! Jungmann, die Lage ist folgende. Vorgestern Abend ist auf dem Allensteiner Bahnhof ein Kriegsgefangenentransport in Brand geraten. Ein Dutzend Russen konnte entkommen und ist zunächst in die Forste nahe Karlstadt geflohen. Dabei haben sie hinterrücks 2 Wachen erdrosselt und deren Waffen entwendet. Da niemand diese Gegend so gut kennt wie ihr, bitte ich euch heute Nacht um eure Hilfe. Wollt ihr an dieser gefährlichen, aufregenden Aktion teilnehmen und mithelfen, diese wilden Horden wieder einzufangen? So gebt mir ein lautes Jawohl, Gauleiter!
Jawohl, Gauleiter!
Na dann, los!
Los, Beeilung! Das Mondtaschen nimmt euch selbst! Hopp.
Scharfe Munition?
Was denkst du denn, oder willst du mit der Hand einfangen? Los, weiter, Beeilung! Der nächste! Los, was? Los!
Aufstehen!
Und anfahren!
Jungmannen! Gebt euer Bestes und lasst sie nicht entkommen. Die fleißigste Gruppe wird von mir persönlich für das Kriegsverdienstkreuz vorgeschlagen.
Durchladen! Sichern! Und los! Marsch, Marsch! Halt, stehen bleiben! Halt, stehen bleiben! Halt, stehen bleiben, bevor die Hände auf euch schießen! Da war was. Einer hatte was in der Hand.
Fahrzeug! Schnell!
Was sagt er?
Ich weiß es nicht.
Springt doch!
That's where we'll cut it. So here they're being told that they're hunting after these horrible Russian prisoners and everything, but really they're hunting after children. And this is again the boys that you saw, they were 16, 17, 18, and they're in school and they've only been shooting with blanks and everything, and they thought, okay, I have a home, I have protection and everything, but they're now being turned into brainwashed war machines. Ben, will you hit the lights for me?
Mhm.
Thank you. So now we're going to move on to taking notes.
What's the name of that movie we just watched?
Oh, it's called Before the Fall, Napola.
Wait, Before the Fall?
Before the Fall, Napola. Napola. Very good. Free online on YouTube.
2004 movie?
I believe so. You have to make sure that you get one with captions. But, okay,
Yeah.
so we'll start with, since we've just worked with the Nazis, we'll start with the Nazis. Now, Hitler said, the weak must be chiseled away. I want young men and women who can suffer pain. A young German must be as swift as a greyhound, as tough as leather, and as hard as a Krupp steel. He believed that the future for Germany and the Third Reich was teaching the youth now the Nazi ways. This is the ideology of the Jews being the enemy. He needed an enemy, and that's what he chose. He said the Jews. He said that there was a separation, and going back to Julie's project, he said that animals stay within the same breed, and swans stay with swans, and ants stay with ants, and that Jews were different than German people. Now, also, when he was focusing on the youth, he believed that like I said, gender would be separated. Now, the boys were part of military training, while the girls were taught motherhood. Now, both genders were taught German poetry, they were taught to read, to write, they were given homes, but the military training would include marching, bayonet drills, grenade throwing, trench digging, map reading, gas defense, use of dugouts, and how to get under barbed wire. Now, the girls were learning things from motherhood. They were taught how to sew, how to cook. They were taught how to take care of a child. So, this is differentiate between Stalin's ideas for youth. Now, going back to this whole education, similar to what Julie was pointing out, they were saying that science, math, history were all very important, but it was the Nazi ideology in creating a super race, this Aryan race, that was important. He was saying that dislike for Jews is innate and uncorrupt in German youth. Adults have lost this healthy racial instinct. They have forgotten how to see racially. He says that likes stay with likes. And he says that a child will see a Jew in the streets and run away from them, and yet adults now can't see that racial difference. He was saying that the youth, the males, will become future members of the SS, which was the army, the Gestapo. He wanted military, and that he was saying with females, going back to Julie, again, thank you for doing the education part, because it's really good. Because the thing is that he says that females, we did not warn them if they had been intimate with a Jewish male before, and he's saying that we should not blame them, but they will forever be scarred by this interaction.
5 minutes.
Oh, okay. Now, this was all happening, and the Nazi youth were eventually disbanded. Thank God. But let's jump to Stalin. Stalin took a different approach. Stalin, he was going off of Lenin's ideas. 1936, he starts saying that you have the Komosol, which you saw on the slideshow how to spell. I can't spell it. But he was saying that thanks to our comrade Stalin for our happy childhood. They were these groups similar to the Hitler Youth that children were taught how to be future members of society. Now, they didn't separate them by gender necessarily, but they did separate them by class, which is interesting because you see the communists were all about having sort of one class and everything, but he did see that certain children were better suited for different tracks. So he would take them and control them, and he would say, you're going to be a member of the military, you're going to do this, you're going to be in politics someday. and he kept on doing that. Now there was many posters, as you saw on the slideshow, that was touching on this, and he continued to go back to the NEP, which is the new economic policy created under Lenin. He continued to go back to this basic idea of how there were going to be new expectations for society and for the youth, which would also include discipline, because he felt that there were not enough policies. Now, Stalin wanted to create the first Soviet generation, so 1936, this is when you would be considered the first Soviet generation if you were a child.